In 1984, the American pinball industry was in a rough spot. Home video game consoles from Atari had already begun to chip away at the arcade crowd who could now stay home and play all they wanted. The 1983 video game rush had hurt arcade revenue across the board. Operators were buying fewer pins. Manufacturers were cutting production. Williams Electronics needed a hit. The company's president, Lou Nicastro, sat down with his pinball designers in late 1983 and set a clear target. Their next pinball machine had to sell at least 1,900 units. If it didn't, the pinball division would be reviewed for closure. So this was a Hail Mary sort of a project. The team got to work and designed a pinball machine themed around the Space Shuttle. They licensed a scale model from NASA and put it directly on the Playfield. They hoped to sell 1,900 orders. They sold over 7,000. Space Shuttle became the best-selling pinball machine of 1984. I'm Ryan. This is the Skill Shot, and today we're talking about Space Shuttle.
2, 1.
3, 2, 1. Ready, pilot, 1.
Before 1984, pinball machines had drop targets, ramps, lanes, pop bumpers, slingshots, and multiballs. That was the toolkit. You could mix and match each of those elements in interesting ways. The artwork on each game was different, but it was difficult to stand out. Williams broke the mold. Space Shuttle was the first solid-state production pinball machine with a Playfield toy. It was licensed from NASA and sits right in the center of the Playfield with a ramp underneath it. Every sculpted toy on every modern pinball machine, the Smog on my Hobbit, the Sandman on my Spider-Man, the Grogu on Mandalorian, can all be traced back to this industry first. Williams didn't just save themselves with this machine, they changed what a pinball machine could be. 1984 was the high water mark of public excitement about American spaceflight. NASA flew 5 Space Shuttle missions that year, one about every 2 months. The shuttle program had moved from experimental to operational, and the country was paying attention. Then in 1984, NASA did something that captured the public's imagination in a way no other space event had since the moon landing. Astronaut Bruce McCandless became the first human being to fly free in space without a tether. He drifted over 300 feet from the cargo bay of Challenger. No safety line, no connection to the shuttle. Just a single astronaut alone against the blackness of space. Space was the most exciting thing happening in America in 1984, and Williams put it on this pinball machine. When a player walked up to Space Shuttle in 1984, they weren't just playing pinball, they were joining NASA on a mission. Throughout the game, you'll be trying to spell shuttle by hitting stand-up targets scattered around the playfield. Each letter adds to the liftoff bonus, which can be collected once the word is completed. The ultimate goal is a multiball. To get there, you need to lock balls in the side saucers, open the airlock, and successfully launch a ball into the shuttle itself. There's a clear primary objective: spell shuttle, advance the liftoff bonus, eventually start a multiball. But there's also a feature called stop and score. That was unusual for the era. When you hit the ramp during certain modes, the score keeps cycling. You can hit the ramp at the right moment and lock in a higher value. This was a primitive version of what we now call timed shots. Pinball wouldn't fully develop this concept until the 90s, but Space Shuttle was experimenting with it in 1984. Space Shuttle sold roughly 7,000 units, 4,000 more than the second best-selling pinball machine of 1984. That success came at a critical moment for Williams. The company had been struggling, and many historians credit Space Shuttle with helping reverse its fortune. Without Space Shuttle, the history of pinball might look very different. The company that would later give us Funhouse, Twilight Zone, The Addams Family, Indiana Jones, Medieval Madness might never have become the dominant force in the 1990s if it wasn't for this game. In that sense, we owe this game a lot. Today, Space Shuttle remains a respected classic and typically sells in the $2,500 to $3,500 range, making it one of the most affordable ways to own a genuinely historic pinball machine. Now let's give it a flip score. There's 5 categories, 20 points each. 100 max. The first up is shots. The layout is good for 1984. The launch ramp is satisfying. The airlock drop target opening the shuttle is a great mechanical moment. The flow is fine, and it gets a 13 out of 20. For code and depth, spell shuttle, build a liftoff bonus, start a multi-ball. There's no modes, no story arc. The rules are deep enough to enjoy for an evening, but not deep enough to chase for years, and so it gets an 11 out of 20. Space Shuttle shines brightest in the theme category. Real NASA license, scale model shuttle, mission control voice acting from Steve Ritchie, cabinet art that captures the 1984 space program excitement perfectly. You don't just play this machine, you go on a mission, and it gets an 18 out of 20. For build quality, Williams System 9 hardware, reliable for its era. The shuttle holds up and replacement parts are available. All pins have minor issues as they age, but the bones are solid, and it gets a 16 out of 20. On resale value, a clean Space Shuttle trades around $2,500. A fully restored one with a new playfield and reproduction back glass can hit $3,500 to $4,000. For a 40-plus-year-old machine, that's a reasonable price point, especially for the NASA nerds out there who want to own a little piece of Space Shuttle history. 15 out of 20 for a total flip score of 73 out of 100. This is the pin that saved Williams. This is the pin that introduced Playfield toys to pinball. This is the pin that proved the industry had a future after video games. Subscribe so you don't miss next week's episode where we're heading to a galaxy far, far away with another mystery pinball machine. It was released in 2021. It's not based on a movie, and one of the late great actors in the cast recorded original voice work for the machine before he passed away. Leave your guess in the comments, and I'll see you next week on The Skill Shot.